Hi, I'm Eddie and I built our version of Priscilla, with a bit of help as well, but generally on my own. And I just want to give you a couple of notes before I sort of launch into how to put it together and what order to put it together in sort of just basics on her. Largely, she is held together with lots of M8 bolts, all of which are bagged up for different sections. So there's a section for the front roof bit, for the rear roof, for the base. It's all really clearly labelled. So M8 bolts, most of them. I would recommend putting them in with a drill. I wouldn't use an impact driver, ideally. You can, but it's a bit harsh on them. I'd use a drill where it's got one of these, what I call a clutch. I'm not sure what anyone else calls it, where you can set it on a number and it will stop turning. When it gets tight enough, it'll just stop. If you don't have it on that and you just have it on drill, when it does up, it will try and break your wrist, right? So always have it on that. Generally, you just line the two bits up, put your bolt in, put your drill on there and just wind it in until it makes the awful noise, like that. If it doesn't go in, there's a couple of strategies you can use. Firstly, the wobble it and see if it goes. If it really doesn't go in and you think it might, the first thing to do is actually just try the drill on it. Sometimes that will just wind it straight in and it will go. The other thing is if you're really struggling, just loosen off all the bolts on that section, get them all nearly done up, and then go around and do them up again. Those strategies will usually be enough to do it. I'd also recommend, I haven't got it with me, but you will also need a 13mm, oh yeah, sorry, that ratchet is 13mm. You will need a 13mm either spanner or ideally a ratchet spanner or maybe a small socket with a 13mm on the end, just for a couple of the ones that are harder to reach, okay? Those are the basics. Over to someone who looks very much like me to tell you how to put it together. So the first section to put on is, for us, it's always the cab section. You could start with the two bases and put those together first, but I think putting the cab section on the front is a good place to start. Front section, brackets, cab, are the bolts. I think there are 8 of them. I would line it up, just drop it on the top there, just line it up so it looks like it's in the right place. And then drop all of the bolts just loosely into where they go, because you'll very quickly see if any don't fit. If you have one that decides it doesn't want to drop in, when you put the drill on it, it will probably be fine. I think the most awkward one is actually this corner, just underneath the electrics. It might be the best one to start with. Drop her in place, and then go around putting the others in. So this one is one of those examples of one that has decided it doesn't want to go. If you're working on high speed, which I was, which is not great actually, it's better to have it on low speed. Try it again. And quite often it'll be a lot happier. So sometimes the low speed on the drill is actually a better place to go. Okay, so either first or straight after you've done the cab, you need to put the two base units together. Be a bit careful. One has wheels in the corner, which I'm kneeling on. This one doesn't, and so it does seesaw a little bit if you try and sit on it. There are 3 plugs you need to be wary of. It's very tricky to put them together before. You'll have to bolt them together and then go underneath and connect those, all right? So the first thing really is to just offer the two things together. You see there's these little flaps, that just little little ledges. So it kind of sits on those. It should just wheel together quite nicely. If it doesn't, you might have to lift one. Check your cables are out of the way. Then once you've done those, nip over that side. 3 bolts, just underneath the edge if you come under here. Sometimes it's a good idea to do one loosely, but quite often they'll work if you just do them in sequence. Do all 3 and then connect the 3 connectors together, the electrical connectors. So 3 bolts, 3 connectors. Yeah? Yeah. So main side wall next, which is this long wall that's got all the annoying tassels on. When you put it in place, you can kind of see roughly where it goes. On the edge, just be careful of all the tassels and bits of material, make sure they're not caught up. The first one is one that goes up here. It goes from underneath, and you just have to kind of fiddle with it. If I wasn't on video, I'd probably be led on the floor doing this. Again, same drill as always. Sometimes it's a good idea just to start it a little bit with your fingers, just so it's in place, but don't go mad, just a tiny bit. And then obviously, make sure the drill's going the right way. Yep, one, then round this way. The next one's just under this edge. If you sort of run your finger underneath carefully, obviously don't cut yourself on anything, there you can feel where the holes are, or you could just lay down and have a look. Generally, just put the drill on it. If it's not quite going in, it's probably just not lined up. And again, feel a little bit further. Here's the next one. If you've got someone that likes laying on the floor, this is a perfect job for them. So have a little feel. That one's not quite on. So she's going to be a candidate. She's just a tiny bit off. So I'm going to put it onto drill and be a little bit careful. Just do the last little bit with the drill, all right? She was already quite lined up. I'm not, it's not cross-threaded or anything. So after the side wall, we've then got the back wall to do. You lift it up onto the edge and then sort of slide it into place. There's 4 bolts underneath, 4 bolts up the side. The steel of it sits just on the back edge of the steel on the base, so it sort of overhangs a little bit. So first thing is lift her up onto the edge, just onto the edge, and then you sort of push her across into where she's going to go. It's handy if you put some of the brakes on at that point.
Yeah, this is awkward. Okay.
So once you've put the back section in place, you can see where it lines up on the edge. So, just should line up rather nicely. Back section bolts. Inside there are 4 little bags of specific bolts for this outside edge. I think it's a good idea to do the outside first, because the person I've got around there holding it up, once I've put 1 bolt in, it'll be fine. They're labelled 1 to 4. The first one is bottom. The reason they're there is because they colour match the sort of rust that's on the outside. Okay, so 1 starts at the bottom, obviously 4 is at the top, and it says so on the bag. I'm going to start at number 3 because why not? Put them in. If it's not quite going in, just make sure that the back is in place. Just keep wobbling it, and if necessary, just try it with the drill, and usually they'll go straight in. Then up to you, kind of how fastidious you are with which way around the washer goes. I think as long as they're in the right place, it's fine. Then put all 4 of those in, and then do the underside afterwards. So once you've done the 4 side bolts, you then need to do the underneath ones. And you can see here, because everything's removed, where it's going. I'd start with the end one. Start with that first of all. You might want to lay on the floor for this. I'm far too old to be laying on the floor. And then put it up in there. It's not very long before they bite. If you have trouble getting the other ones in, go back and just loosen all 4 off, just a tiny bit, till you get them all in. Once they're in, you can just nip them up tight. Okay, so do all 4 of those. Something to say about the side ones, don't forget when you are taking her apart again, to put the particular bolts in the coloured things, so the bottom one goes in the bottom, top in top, etc. Okay, cool. So we're going to put the bench seat in next, and you've got to be careful with these cables that someone needs to film. Because the bench seat sort of sits over the top, and any electrics that you've got go underneath that, either before or later on. I mean, generally, I think putting them in afterwards is easier. If you've got something huge, maybe put it in before the bench seat. But generally, after is fine. So make sure they're out of the way. There's a couple of lines on the floor where you can see where the bench seat goes. So as long as they're inside of that, we're all good. Then lift the bench seat with your arms and place her across. And when she's there, she needs to be pushed. As I say, be careful with your cables. When she's on, then she just needs to be pushed as far as you can in that corner. You can see there's a little bit of overlap wood on that edge. If you can film that.
It needs to go that way.
And it looks like it needs to go that way, but it doesn't. It's just that there's a slight gap on that edge, okay? So once it's in, you've then got 4 bolts to put in. 2 of which have washers and 2 don't. They're exactly the same length, just 2 have washers and 2 don't. So the 2 with washers go at the back edge because they go through wood and need a washer. The 2 at the front don't. They go through steel, so they don't need a washer on them. So just put it up straight through the steel. Hopefully it will line up. If it doesn't quite line up, you just need to give it a slight wobble until it does. And it should go through. Just make sure you have got it on that clutch setting. Oops. And then the ones with washers go on the back edge and they just go, there's a hole in the wood at the back there. And again, if it's not quite lined up, just give it a wobble. Until it goes through. Small sidewall next, the little wall that sits on the edge of this bench seat. Small sidewall bolts, obviously, and again, there's one loose one, which is the one that does the base there. The others, there are, I think, 3, yep. Top, middle, and bottom, which are, again, slightly colour-coded to go on the outside. So you get your little wall, there's 2 little cutouts for the handle. It can be a little bit awkward trying to get past it. There we go, she goes in fine. There's a little bracket on here. We don't need to put it on screen because it's really obvious. That's the one without a washer. And then you've got your 3 colour-coded ones that go in. Again, when you put them back, please try and get them, remember to put them in the bags. It's not desperate, but it just helps, I think, with the colour matching on the rust work. So, try not to drive those in too hard. I mean, you can't if you've got the clutch on anyway, because they don't have washers on this side. There's probably a good reason why, but I can't remember now. Just make sure you put all 3 bolts in and put them back in the bags afterwards. Okay, so once you've done the little sidewall, you're ready to put the roof on. I would put the front section on first with the sign and so on. It's the one that's a bit heavier. It's got to be said, this is a lot easier when you've got more than 2 people, but we should be fine. That's David. And obviously we've got one person here who's useless because they're filming. But anyway, you put, obviously put her up in place, put her up there, someone holds her up, and you put, there's about 8 bolts or so that go up through the side. So I might speed this section up, but we'll film it anyway.
Over there, that side there.
Oh yeah, okay. So the front edge actually drops off over the front edge of the frame there, and you have to be careful. This little side bit, just make sure that fits in. Might need to go back a tiny bit. Yeah, so even with 2 people we managed that. It's not very elegant, but we did. If you've got more people, it's a lot easier. Obviously then, grab a drill, go around. Some of the bolts are kind of rusty coloured, some are completely sort of black. You know, your choice where they go. No one's going to be looking at those bolts because I'm sure your dance routines are fabulous. One thing to keep in mind though, there are 4 bolts that have got yellow heads. They are to join the 2 sections together. So don't use those for the upwards ones. They're a little bit longer than the others anyway, I think, right? So the 4 yellows are for joining, the others go round the side. So one additional for this little bit of roof, sometimes getting this section into place can be a little bit hard because of the angles and it wants to just sit on top. What you need to do is try and apply sort of pressure, you know, 1 or 2 people just pushing these apart a little bit and someone else pulling down on the roof, and it should slot down into place, okay? So most of the bolts are quite easy and accessible. There are 4 that are not. You need to put them up in there. Either a small little socket set with a 13mm head on it, or I've got this sort of ratchet spanner on there. And then obviously you just, you know, have to put them in manually. It's the only ones I think on the whole bus that you have to put manually, unfortunately. And it's just because of the access, okay? So 4 bolts, some kind of mini socket or ratchet set to do those. Next section, once you've done the front roof, is the back roof. There's this little kind of spigot that sticks out that needs to end up under here. So it's a slight bit of manhandling, but it's very light and it's very easy to move. Yeah, it's just a case of lifting it, putting it in place. So, come on, David. Woof, woof. Right, so if I lift mine goes under. If you don't have an Australian, any nationalities are fine. Beauty. Okay, so and then you just need to try and drop the back in, and you can see there's little bits of the ply at the back there that it needs to try and sit. If she doesn't want to go at the back, it might just be a case of joining it here first. Yeah. So, Dave, can you just come and hold that?
I can do that.
So if someone holds it up in place, those yellow bolts from earlier, if you drop those through, they're not lined up. Then that will pinch it up a little bit and that will probably make it go a little bit better. Once you've joined those and possibly put the roof actually in place, there is one bolt from the front section which goes up through that little extra spigot and pinches those two up together, okay? Then you go round and you put in the remaining bolts. Again, there are a couple under this side, 2 or 3, that you need to use the hand ratchet for, okay? So additional, I just reminded myself of something from when we made Priscilla. These ones, again, the ones that you have to use the hand ratchet for, there are 4 along this edge. The back one you can get a drill on. These front 2, with a bit of, like, you know, sort of pushing around, they'll go in and you do by hand. This one, for some reason, we always struggle to get the bolt in. If you can't get it in, don't worry, there are plenty of bolts holding it on. It's not going to go anywhere. So just this particular one here, sometimes you don't really need it. It's fine, okay? So if you're using our little lights, the little birdies, little tiny mini parkan things, the first one starts in this back corner. You can tell which one's the first one because it's the one that has the power lead coming off the end of it. They're all wired together and heat shrink together. Start with one. I'd suggest you lay them out first before you put them up because they're invariably a bit tangled. You have, come back here. So you have one. The first one goes up in this corner over here. The second one goes in the center. Then you've got 2 in quick succession. One goes just behind this spar and one goes right in the front corner. Another one goes in the next front corner. And then the last one that goes just here. And the basic idea for our lighting was that we had 2 just above the center here pointing backwards. We had number 1 and then the one just behind this spar sort of pointing towards the kind of back wall. Fill it out. And then there were 2 on this front edge kind of pointing at the driver and anyone that's at this point. Obviously you can focus them as you like. There's a little bag of these little wing bolts, little M6 wing bolts. Once you've laid out your birdies, put them up where they're going, little washer through the bottom, and you'll find, particularly in the corner ones, there's a small M6 hole that's threaded, and so by hand you just need to put them in, as long as you don't get them cross-threaded. Once you start them, which is the fiddly bit, once you start them then they go in quite quickly. You just do it up by hand and obviously focus it as you like, and then drop the mains cable down the back with the cables that do the brake lights and the indicators as well. Okay, the tech section where you can put all your sort of gubbins for all the tech stuff. We've got with our pack, it comes with a relay, DMX relay, and a single DMX dimmer. The DMX dimmer runs the birdies, the one for the birdies. The relay then is there for your indicators, for your headlights, for the sign, and for the brake lights as well. They can all go in here. Now there's this panel. Now we did originally make these little catches. I worked with them fine, but other people kept breaking them. In the end, we actually, honestly, the best way we found was put it in there and put some black gaffer over it, just to hold it in place. To be honest, it sits there most of the time anyway, but a bit of gaffer just stops it going anywhere. Right, once the front bit of roof is on, you can put in these 3 plugs, and they're coloured Yellow, blue and red. I can't remember which one does which. Yellow and blue are definitely headlights and indicators. Can't remember which way round. Then the red one actually is attached to the roof section. There's a little bit of like trunking here. You can take the lid off and pass it round. It's the same trunking you use for the Birdies as well. And you just then pass it down this little bit of trunking here. So you've got the red one, which does the sign. Okay, so the red one is the sign. So now we're on to my least favourite job, the wheels. Not least because aren't car wheels heavy? They're numbered. The number is either on the front plate or on the top. Most of them are on the top. I think number 1's the only one that's on the front. So that says number 2. You can't see it, but it is there very clearly in the light. The wheel also at the top, they're numbered. It is easier if you put them that way round. There are 2 bolts that hold each one up. I suggest that you get her in place. I try to do it with a little bit of wood underneath. And I put her in place roughly. Oh, see, it is awkward. Get her roughly lined up. Then, she's a little bit low at the moment, so I tend to then use that to sort of lever up a little bit to try and get them on, however it works. Actually, to be honest, that's quite good. Obviously, then, whatever size a normal wheel is, which escapes me, you use that size socket. Quite often you can put them in by hand. Once the top one's in, always do the top one first. Usually a bit of wood comes out quite easy. Once you've got the top in, the bottom one should go a lot easier. And then it's just a case of putting it in. Sometimes, again, a little bit of wood makes it a bit easier. And then, I don't need to show you that, you just do them up, okay? So the chair is on its base and it's all in one unit. There are 2 bolts with washers, quite large washers, that hold it down. And if you come around here, you can see what they're aiming for. It goes through the bolt there and then through that hole into a captured nut underneath, okay? So it's a case of, you just bring it across and you see there's a little stop bar that just helps you locate it a little bit. Just put it in the corner there, drop the 2 bolts in, job's done. Hi. So now we're on to the 3 panels that go on the outside. The first one is the plain one. I find you just put it straight down onto the little ledge. So one of these bars, as you'll notice at the bottom, is permanently fixed to the van. That's so it can sit on it. I also then sort of use the wheel arch as a bit of a locator, push it straight back, make sure they're the right way around, and then you just clip all 3, put it in place. There are 3. There's the plain one. There's the one with the naughty writing on it, which we all know about from the show. And then there's you can replace it with a completely pink one for when they're supposed to paint the bus pink, okay? And it's quite quick to go on and yeah, worked for us. So on the corners of the bus are these 4 handles, and they're like proper motorhome handles. We have found in the past that actually they're not quite as strong as we would like. There are some spares in case anything does happen, but it's probably best not that we use them for guidance rather than for wrenching it around. Particularly pushing is a lot easier than pulling, and if you're pushing, you're kind of using that for guidance, but you're also pushing on the hard bits of the set as well. So just be careful, particularly like pulling it sideways like that. Just be a little bit careful. Yes, they are there to manipulate it, but just be aware, you know. And they might break, and if they do, there are a couple of spares in the box as well. All right, here is the last section, which is the tech, okay? Now, obviously, unless you're very happy for your bus to be tethered, so it's got a permanent power supply and permanent cable doing the lighting control, you're going to need to use this because, you know, it's nice to have the bus kind of free moving, you know, being able to spin and so on, and not tripping up any dancers. So first thing, in the box, there's my wireless transmitter for the DMX for the lighting control, and the receiver's obviously on the board. That then goes into both the relay, the power relay. There's 4 channels on there, and then a single dimmer. It's an old CCT Freedom dimmer, but it still works absolutely fine. There are a couple of spares in the box just because they are a bit old, but to be fair, it works absolutely fine for us, and it's been fine since. The one thing I would say, there's an end-of-line resistor on the DMX for that. Modern stuff doesn't seem to care if you have that or not. This will care. It'll start sending funny signals around the place. So make sure you've got that plugged in. If possible, have it all on its own universe as well, but it's not necessarily essential. So you've got to obviously set your DMX address for the 4 channels on here. These are for your headlights. I think there's 1 lead for the headlights. Then there's 2 leads for the brake lights. Or no, 1 for the brake lights, I think. Then there's 2 for the indicators, the front and the back set. And the last one, I've got this little sort of converter here that just goes to a regular mains plug, because that then made it easier to plug in both the plug in the fairy lights. And then you've got the other part of that. I would put the fairy lights, if you're using them, with the sign, the Priscilla sign on the front, so those both come on together. So there's your sort of 5 channels from that. Obviously, whatever that's being powered from, probably a power pack. Plug that in. If you're using a power bank, then we used one that we charged both before the show and we charged it in the interval, just to make sure. To be fair, it probably would have made it all the way through a show, but we just wanted to make sure. So, enjoy.